My name is James D. Schultz, and I was a torpedoman second class by the time I got out. This is kind of strange, I spent months training with the electricity electronics school, submarine school, torpedoman school, and then you finally now I've got about a year and a half of training already in. Then I finally get to the bang, and I was on there about 2 years. And then I was expecting to stay on there another year, but it ended a little early, so about 2 years service time on the ship. It was very minimal. I mean, the amount of clothing you only had a very small 1.5 foot by 1.5 foot locker, and whatever other clothes you might have, you could put them underneath your little thin mattress, which is only about that thick, on top of your bed. But underneath, everybody put all of their clothes that they didn't want to get wrinkled, like their whites, things like that. Initially, though, my sleeping area was in the middle of the ship, in the crew's quarters. I mentioned the torpedo that hit the bow. I wasn't up there, but so it was very cramped, obviously, and but it was comfortable. I mean, you were always so tired because you were working so hard that you didn't have any trouble going to sleep. And then we were working on qualifying in submarines, so you had to learn all these systems. So your spare time, you were learning all these things and you didn't really sleep much. The other thing I remember about sleeping conditions in the middle of the ship, it tended to not be so rough there because all the motion was in the bow or the stern. So you're in the middle and it wasn't quite as jiggly there. And but we would hit some really bad storms. I mean, around Cape Hatteras, North Carolina, coming back from Caribbean, it was just like in the movies. I mean, it was water going way over the sail, 60-foot waves. So you got to sleep with this ship really rocking. How are you going to do that? You're not going to be able to stay in your bed. You're going to fly out. So what we would do is there was chains holding the ends of the bed. You would lift up your bed a little bit and chain it up a little higher so you had like a wedge, and that was how you were able to sleep, because otherwise you'd fly right out. There was so much rocking motion, and you'd hear stuff flying around. There'd be shaving cream cans and toasters in the galley flying around, and everybody was sort of ill most of the time. There was times where maybe there was only 2 guys on the whole ship that felt okay because it was so violent. But you'd get through that. I mean, it was only a week or 2 of that kind of stuff. You never gained weight because you just weren't eating. You couldn't even keep the food on your plate. Your eggs would slide off. So it was quite a trick. Anyway, eventually I was a torpedoman, so I ended up in the forward torpedo room. Now here you have to sleep on a bed that's that far underneath a torpedo. So here you're in your bed up there, and you can't roll over if you wanted to flop over. So you had to get out if you felt like you wanted to sleep on your stomach, and you couldn't sleep on your side. And then you just get out and get back in and sleep on your stomach. But up there, the wave action was so dramatic sometimes. It was like a roller coaster ride all the time. There was no stopping it. You'd go up in the air, float like a roller coaster, and then boom, down. You'd hear the water rushing around outside. And it was tough to sleep in those conditions too. But as far as the food goes, the food was good, and you could eat as much as you wanted. They always served you every 4 hours when you're out to sea. The only other comment I might have is, I mentioned when we're on the surface, I was a lookout, so you're way up at the top of the sail. Well, there's an officer up there with you, and I remember this officer specifically, Lieutenant Krieger. He said, Jim, why don't you go down and get us some coffee? So you're 60 feet up. You got to go down all these ladders, then down to the conning tower, down some more ladders, over into the galley to the coffee pot. So you've got these, now three coffee cups. It was rough, the ships. So I fill up the coffee cups as best as I could. I got 3 cups. They're stacked up on one another with whatever coffee I could get in them. So I go back up and I'm trying to go up there. By the time you get all the way up to the top, you maybe got that much coffee, and half of it's salt water. But those are the kind of things you endured, but interesting experiences. I do remember we had 2 different captains while I was on. And the first captain was actually a lieutenant commander. He wasn't a full-blown commander. And he was awesome. We were over in the Mediterranean, and he was a party animal. And we pulled in Palma, Mallorca, just off of Spain. And we're at the pier, and it's shore time for some of the guys. I got stuck I had the deck watch, so I had to walk around with a 45 and on the bow of the ship. And so I see this taxi cab come, it's about midnight. And here comes this taxi cab, and it's coming down the pier, and the door's open, and here's our captain. He falls out, and he might have had a little too much to celebrate. And he came staggering up. Well, he had some friends with him too. And I don't know, he gave the girls a tour of the ship. And all I could do, I was just laughing. But then we had and he wasn't what I would call straight-laced, but then he got replaced, not because he was doing a bad job, just I guess it was regular rotation. But we got another captain, and I think it was Commander High was the second guy, and he was a lot more straight-laced and a little more disciplined, and you could tell the tone of the crew had changed with the tone of the captain. So very interesting. I think we all knew what we were doing. There was everybody was well educated, and many of the enlisted guys were college graduates, and they weren't officers, but certainly all the officers were college graduates. Excuse me. And then I don't think we all knew what we were doing, and I don't think change of command made a big difference. The diesel fuel odor was just permeated everything there. Even I mentioned the clothes you put underneath your mattress to kind of keep. It didn't matter. They weren't protected. You just permeated everything. I mean, your clothing and senses and your nose, and at the time when I had hair, your hair smelled, and there's no doubt what you were doing for the U.S. Navy. They smelled you before they saw you. Even my wife said I'd bring some of my clothes back to home there occasionally, and stuff really smells. There's no getting away from it, so you just live with it. I don't know, I had one other thing that was interesting. The restroom. For the enlisted guys, it was in the middle of the ship. You may have seen it today. And 2 side-by-side commodes. But the interesting thing about that is flushing. It was not a handle. There was a series of valves. You had to bring in seawater, and it flushed to what they call a sanitary tank. So it was not an easy thing, and there's instructions on the door there to make sure, otherwise you could flood the ship. So you had to know what you're doing just to flush the toilet. And some of the ships we saw today, the battleship New Jersey there, it looked like it was a lot more civilized. If you got experienced in cleaning your whole body with one little bowl, sink bowl of water. You could do that. I mean, that's what they used to call Navy shower. And you know, maybe take your shirts and stuff, whatever you could do with a wash rag and wipe yourself down as best you can. Now, you didn't shave either, very rarely. So a lot of guys had beards, and brushing your teeth as often as you could with you could do that with just a very small amount of water. But you're right, they had stills that would make fresh water out of salt water, but they didn't work too well. And they were always, like you say, overheating and hot, and the way we'd get fresh water, if we could, is if we go in a port, we'd tie up to a fresh water outlet and bring water in through some different pipes.